Alright, welcome to episode 63 of What If Civilization Started Over. In the last episode then we had a load of events which I've now forgotten. That's great. Right, so we saw a big war happen up here in Sakhalin sort of area, and the Far Eastern country was destroyed. We had more colonisation occur in Australia, and of course South America as well, where the borders look really strange, and I'm not sure I like them, but oh well. I guess I'll have to live with it. We saw a war also occur, I do believe, over here in Croatia, with the Croatian country being destroyed. I don't know why this is on like a 200. But yep, so now the Italians and the Hungarians divided up that nation, and the Italians look kind of cool. Not gonna lie. So that's pretty good. Apart from that, probably something else that happened. Probably something in Turkey. Turkey, I assume you invaded this country, didn't you? Yes, they invaded Buryada, and they also took this territory from the Blue Country by just buying it. So, in today's episode, we need to go to Russia, because Russia is finally going to get resolved. Both of these countries over here have been arguing about various things. Also, I have a hot chocolate instead of a cup of tea. I know it's a bit unorthodox. It is cold and rainy though. Also, I do live in Britain, so of course it's cold and rainy. What was I expecting? But yeah, my mum wanted to have a hot chocolate, so I also want as well. Anyway, back on with Russia. So the Russian countries are both arguing about which one should be the one to form Russia, or like the idea of Russia. So there's this general idea going around, just all throughout Europe and kind of Asia as well, of a huge Eastern European country filling in this expanse, because all these countries, this area, are extremely large, and countries aren't usually that big, at least with one landmass. So the idea of forming this one huge Russian empire is something that's been thought about a lot by these different countries, and both of these two countries are arguing about which one should have the right to go out eastwards and form this huge thing. So what are they going to do about it? They're going to go to war, obviously. So the countries, they'll go to the capital of the Red Country, where they'll sign an agreement on what should happen if either of them wins the war. So first off, they're going to move the capital city of whichever country occurs to this city over here. It's right at the border of Ukraine, so maybe not a great place to put it, but they kind of want to put it somewhere that's kind of in between both these countries. There's a lot of Uralic people in the southern area of the world, of Russia, and then in this country there's lots of these guys, but also it better reflects just what their kind of ambitions are, which is more going to Europe and also just expanding out here into East Asia. Basically, they're just going to put it there, and that's what's going to happen. So that will end up as the capital of the Russian country once that gets formed. So yeah, that's cool. Apart from that, they want to treat people equally as one Russian group. Now, that's not kind of going to be easy, because if we look at culture for a second, you can see there's a lot of culture in this area, and this one's pretty big, and this one's pretty big, so maybe it wouldn't be too hard, but there's lots of other smaller cultures within all these countries, so it would be hard to mix it all together, but they'll try. So yeah, regardless of that, we can now start a war. They kind of agree on a date, which is, shouldn't do that in a war, you should just surprise them and invade. How the red team will move in first. Both of their capitals are kind of in the southern parts of the country, but the red team realizes that taking the Volga River could be really important, just because of trade opportunities with that. But also they assume the Uralic country is going to use that to try and invade them. So what they do instead is move around here in the north and invade it into the northern part of the country with a huge military invasion, which does extremely well at pushing in to this nation. They also make a secondary invasion up here, as the people that live on this lake, a sort of rural bit. Also, my voice is completely gone, so it's kind of a shame. However, both of these different military groups are going to pincer in towards this city right here in the center. This one's kind of split as they go in two different ways and take this city over here. And a third group, up in the north will move in and take this city before connecting up with this other northern group. Eventually, as the front lines settle, they take over this entire area. However, the Uralic country has now done exactly what they expected, and they're invading into the eastern part of the Red Muscovy country. So yeah, they make a pretty big invasion as well, invading into the southern, kind of more populated parts of the Red country, whilst these guys are invading to the northern parts of Uralia, which has a lot less population in the north. Just generally, the population growth here is a lot higher, which is another reason for putting the capital in that country, because it's going to better reflect who the Russian people are going to be ethnically towards the future. This country does have a lot of people, but here they're a lot more industrialized also. Anyway, Euralia continues moving along the border with Ukraine and takes another major city before moving up north towards this lake right around here. So that's pretty big for the world, for these guys. They try to move towards this city, how it's fairly well defended by the Muscovites. I don't know. And they build a front line over here. Back round to these Russians then, what they're going to be doing is pushing around just this general area, and they try to push towards this core territory down here, whilst these guys are trying to push towards their core territory. And you know what, they're not doing too badly. They've broken through that front line that they just established, and they're now moving up even further towards this major city right here in the central area, and just generally trying to occupy more and more of the southern territory, taking over and surrounding some lakes, and getting towards other major cities, kind of the more northern areas of both of these countries. So that's interesting. They take this one right over here, and I don't know why the border looks like that. It's kind of strange, but oh well. So the red country, they are slowing down a bit. However, they tried to establish a border around here. That's the kind of goal at this point, and they do a pretty good job because they realize they can kind of get on the border of a load of these major cities, like on the, I was going to say outskirts of the capital, but they're definitely a long way away from where the capital city is, so not quite. They also push around here in the north, because why not? Kind of protecting this major city. Euralia and the red team aren't really doing anything in the eastern area. They will in the future, once they've kind of taken the other person's capital, but that's not the priority at the moment. Euralia pushes in and takes another major city, and also moves up north towards another one, whilst they strengthen this front line over here in the east, which they've recently created, and move towards the Uralian major cities up here in the north, hoping to kind of separate trade routes in this area. As they take this major city, it really does a pretty bad thing. And this is a trade route that goes along all four of these cities, and without this one, it's kind of a problem, but not too bad. Whilst in Euralia, they kind of need to worry about, like, lots of the trade goes to the south, which is where most people live in Euralia, so they're not too worried about disruptions with, like, orders and things. I don't know, equipment or supplies. However, the Muscovy people are. So they push back up here in the north and manage to retake that major city, and just generally push back this area in whole. What? They also invade some of this northern area, so they've less of a chance of threatening these major cities. However, the Iranians realize this is actually kind of an important thing, so what they're going to do is just make it look like they're going to pressure that, and instead send all those forces they retreated from this area, except for the ones who just got killed, right towards the capital city. And now Muscovy realizes they are in a really bad position, because they have so many troops over here invading into the northern Uralian area. They can't really defend this invasion from Euralia. That's bad. They're starting to actually properly take over some of these major cities. Or not well, I was going to say core. What would the word be? Assimilate the major cities, and they're now getting onto the outskirt areas where people are a lot less rural, and there's more factories and things like that. And this is quite a major city over here. It's where they're going to put the capital city, and the people there kind of just, they're interested to see how the Uralians are generally. Anyway, Muscovy realizes they really need to make a breakthrough so they can do something major, and what they're going to do is push towards the Volga River. I bet you thought I was going to say this. No, they realize that trying to take this area would really disrupt the military of the Uralian country, and they make a pretty good job at connecting up to this river, taking a major city on the coast, like the banks of it, and pushing towards another one. However, forces from this area, what they're going to do is just retreat from this territory here in Muscovy, and they send their forces from this territory over here, although whilst Muscovy forces are pushing into the eastern territories around here. These guys have just retreated from Muscovy, pushing around into this city. However, they are being chased from behind by forces from Euralia, so it's generally kind of a stressful situation. However, a load of Muscovy troops end up getting surrounded over here, and whilst troops from this area try to push towards these territories, maybe retake some of these cities, and allow their own troops to actually keep living, these guys do not care, and this entire group is killed, which is kind of brutal, and it's going to result in a huge pushback in the northern regions as people lose a load of morale. So this territory is kind of being taken at this point, and that's no good. You kind of need to keep your territory. However, the invasion to the south has had some breakthroughs, with them getting close to various cities along the border of this invading force, and taking this one over here. However, the Volga River area is still safe and protected. So that's nice if you are Uralian. Anyway, troops up here in the north decide to invade into these cities, and at this point, they're kind of realizing their country is way too dependent on their southern territories. That is, the Uralians are. So from here, what they have to do is to retreat from these southern areas, and they end up falling out some of these cities they've just recently captured, including even this one up in the north, which they captured a pretty long time ago into the war. So they're left with a load of empty, barren territory where not many people are, and it's just farmers who can continue on exactly how they were before. But ultimately from this, what they do manage to do is retake that northern territory. But we need to head back over here to the east, because Euralia has not stopped this entire time, and they're still moving in. I don't know if you can actually see too well the difference between both of those colours. However, they are now approaching the capital city of the Muscovy country, and yeah, they're not doing a great job at defending it. They're starting to surround the city, and various other neighbouring cities are being taken as well. So all across the southern area, they've got up close to both these cities, only taking one of them, but that's still pretty bad. We can also see over here in this country, they've had to retreat. Had to retreat even further from these territories, going back to the very bordering areas, and now they're not even occupying a single city within this country, so they just send their forces back to about, and probably not that far, something like this, because they want to keep the lake, and they also want to protect their own cities that they have under occupation. This will allow them to alleviate some of the stress on their capital city, retaking one of these cities, and also this one over here. However, it's not going great still, and an invasion up towards into these northern areas is going to result in more bad things happening, and eventually, as this major city is captured, supplies cannot any longer get into the country, except by going up here, but those routes have been disrupted, and the capital city and a lot of these southern cities have been taken, and from here, we see a complete collapse in the western front. I mean, these Iranian troops are now pretty far away. Probably don't want to be that far away. However, I'm going to simplify it because there's already been like 12 minutes, and following this, what we see happen is the end of the war. These troops will fall back from Euralia, and this territory, over time, of course, will fall over to the forces of Euralia. Yeah, people there kind of realize, there's not much we can do. We are going to have to join the Euralian country, and they're fine with that. The people here have seen the Euralia is the one that won the war better, even though they're less industrialized. This country definitely managed to pick up some new industrial war tactics and things, and they'll probably be better leaders for the future Russian country. And speaking of that country, I'm just going to make it right now, because it's not going to be that complicated. So here we have it, our new nation. Well, new nation, it's just an even more powerful country, and it's going to be one of the strongest countries in the entire world. Also for the capital, of course. Bam. And following that, naturally, we can also remove the capital of the Muscovy country, so goodbye to that city, and the capital of Euralia. It's still like a very major city, and it's like the core territory of this country. However, it's not the capital of this country, so like it's the core of Euralia, but this is now Russia. This kind of signifies something new for Russia. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, a huge Russian country. It looks really cool on the map. I really like it. Is it a top 10 country? Well, it's funny you should bring that up because I nearly forgot. I don't think the top 10 rankings have changed at all. We're kind of approaching the 1870s at this point. That war lasted for about 3 years maybe. I don't want to read the top 10 rankings. It's not because I can't be bothered. It's just they haven't really changed. So it's not really worthwhile doing it. But Russia isn't stronger than Ukraine. They're maybe like 11th. I mean, who else is 11th? The Dutch. Yeah, they're kind of competing with the Dutch for that position. Maybe also the Spanish countries. They're fairly strong. Italy, Hungary, they're less powerful than that. Anyway, some countries feel threatened by this, and especially Ukraine, whose economic growth rate is a lot slower than the growth rate of the Russian country. So what are they going to do about that? They're going to send some diplomats to Turkey, and then some Turkish diplomats go to Astrakhan, and I think you can see where this is going, as Ukrainian troops up here in the northern areas begin their invasion into the poor, unfortunate Caucasian country. This is pretty sad. Sorry. So they send troops over the Kerch Strait and invade into the Krasnodar region of Caucasia. They take a major city over here and manage to push around through these northern territories, getting into Circassia now. Down here in these southern regions, we see the Turkish. The Turkish do a similar sort of thing. They push around and take some of these major cities, and they secure some southern areas, but the main bit is them moving up towards the Caucasian capital city, where they're going to get like the most stuff. And in the north, we see Astrakhan troops mainly invade the rural areas. Well, they do a pretty good job of that. They send troops fully across the border in fairly small divisions and approach the major cities, just threatening them and not quite taking them, because Astrakhan is actually weaker than Caucasia. Luckily, Caucasia is entirely falling apart, so as Ukrainian troops move down the coast and takes these major cities that Astrakhan is struggling with, yeah, it's basically just going to all fall apart. Turkey takes the capital city, and from here they invade into the central parts of the country, and following that, Astrakhan troops take the final two major cities, and we see the complete occupation of the Caucasian country. Alright, so, as you can see, the Caucasian country no longer exists. I don't know if you thought that just because it's one of the first 5 countries, I was going to keep it around, but I obviously have not. So the Ukrainians have gained even more power, and I actually really like their borders. I don't know if you can see. It looks really cool. The Astrakhan country has gained some land over here. It doesn't look great, and the Turkish actually do look pretty cool up here in Caucasia as their nation grows even more powerful. The Turkish are just really, really strong in this series. They're like the Ottoman Empire, which is kind of what I was going for with this entire concept of the Turkish Empire. So yeah, one of the oldest countries in the world has just destroyed another one of the oldest countries in the world. So that's a bit of a shame. Anyway, this video is currently 16 minutes long, so I think I'm going to do just a couple more things. I'm just going to pause it for a second. I'll be back. And maybe, can I pause it? Hello? Hello? Alright, so I've drawn some new borders for South America. Obviously, I've coloured in that bit, but I've drawn this border here. I didn't want to change it, so I just left it like that. Boom, boom. So, yeah, the blue southern Spanish country takes over all of these territories. They now border the Pacific Ocean, so that's pretty good. And the Brazilian purple country takes over these territories along with this giant bit down here, because their border previously looked something like this. Not quite. More like this. Yes, they've gained a little new territory. That's good. The French and the Africans, North Africans, I don't know. They very obviously didn't move their colony, as you just saw. But they might not do that ever again. They might just leave their colonies like this, because I kind of like how the borders look. I'm kind of okay with it. So yeah, that's fun. And now I'm going to go to Australia, so we'll be back in a second. Maybe. That was fairly easy. So the Dutch will take over all of this territory, making their colony look more like a Western Australian colony. We see the British take over both of these bits of territory, and in the East, the Chinese take over this very small bit right over here, along with this island. There we go. Cool. So yep, all 3 of these countries have expanded their territory, and then following them, we see happens the Germans. No, the Germans are not going to take up that. Don't worry. Don't worry, guys. It's fine. Probably split between all 4 of them. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with Australia. It's a continent I didn't really think about, but we've got here now, and we're doing it anyway. So let's do our final event of the video, where we have to return to the Mediterranean Sea, because we need to go to the Italian country. Cool. What's Italy doing today? Well, they're loading a load of people onto boats. You know, a load of people. Whoa. And where are they going to take these people? Well, they take them south. They get on a boat here in Pisa, and they sail southwards past these islands that are there, so don't worry. Past the Turkish colony, and then past Malta, heading east, until they make a drop-off right here at the Libyan capital city, where Italian troops make a landing in what is kind of modern-day Benghazi, and take the capital city with a lot of ease. From there, their troops move around the coast, taking over the remaining major cities of the Libyan country before it kind of just submits, because this country has been a depressing sort of place ever since it lost that war to Turkey and the Turkish allies. Also, I want to fix that. There we go. Right, cool. And following this war, what we see happening is the full annexation of the Libyan territory into the nation of Italy. And this is going to start something. I don't know if you can guess what it is, but in the next episode, we will be looking at the Berlin Conference. So, we've got, actually, not that much longer the video to do, but you know, I'm going to name all the countries that are involved in this conference, and I would like you to know that I'm doing like an accurate Berlin Conference. And what I mean by that is that not every country I name will be getting territory, just like in real life, where these 7 countries got stuff. So, involved in this conference, which is going to be held here in Pisa, in the Italian country, we have Britain, Ireland, France, northern Spain, southern Spain, Catalonia, Carthage, Italy, Belgium, the Dutch, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Poland, Hungary, Turkey, Ukraine, China and Korea. Actually, not China, I mean just Korea. There we go, sorry. So all of those countries, which I haven't counted, but they will all be involved in this conference. Did I say Poland? I hope I did, because I meant Poland. The Russians aren't invited, the Finns aren't invited, but almost everyone else in Europe with a coastline is invited. So that's nice. Alsace is in. Carthage is also noticeably invited to this. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. I'm going to be going over that in the next episode. The Koreans are also here for some reason. Don't know. The Europeans kind of like Korea. They just round over there, North America. Yeah, it's chill. Anyway, if you enjoyed today's episode, like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you again next time. Goodbye.